If you're more of a solo player and you're looking for a frame that can rise up to the challenge, then Glass Queen Gara might be just what you need. Hey, how's it going, you beach ball lovers? Balloon Boy Leo here. In the previous videos, I've presented to you some very efficient squad setups that can tackle not only arbitrations, but also the normal counterpart missions successfully. So this time around, we will take a look at a solo setup instead. I myself like to go for a solo run every now and then, and Gara, being my most used frame in arbitrations, is a very strong contender. She has 3 big advantages. Her damage scales infinitely, her personal defense is one of the best in the game, and her playstyle is pretty simple once you get used to it. I recommend her for survival and defense missions, and she can go up to 2 hours without much of a hustle. As always, 2 hours is a bit of a soft cap for most frames, simply because the enemies start to hit so hard that it's difficult to stay alive. So unless you're Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, that one-shot anvil will eventually come. First, let's take a look at the build, and then we'll talk about how to use her. What I love most about Gara is that all her 4 abilities are useful and they combo very well together. Her bread and butter is her second ability, Splinter Storm. There are 3 main aspects about it that we care about. First is the 90% damage reduction, second is duration, and third is the infinitely scaling damage when used in combo with the other 3 abilities. We can achieve the 90% damage reduction with the help of Intensify. Duration is also very important because you don't want to overstress about keeping Splinter Storm up all the time, so we use Continuity and Narrow-Minded to boost it up. The range at which Splinter Storm deals damage to enemies is affected by ability range, so we don't want to go too much in the negative, and we balance it with a Stretch Mod and Cunning Drift. Because we'll be spamming abilities all the time, adding Streamline to reduce the energy cost is common sense. We complement this with Flow for a larger energy pool. Now, because of the 90% damage reduction, Gara is a prime candidate to use Vitality together with Adaptation. Adaptation is an excellent mod on frames which are already tanky. If you have Arcane Guardian, I highly recommend it as well because her base armor is pretty low. As far as the rest of her equipment goes, it doesn't matter what you use for primary and secondary, it's down to preference. I recommend something that can one-shot the arbitration drones, such as a kit gun with high radiation damage. The most important is the melee weapon, which acts like a stat stick for her first ability. The mods used on this weapon will boost her first ability's damage and consequently will determine how fast you stack up damage on her second ability, Splinter Storm. So what you want are mods which boost flat damage or elemental damage. You will not be using this weapon for attacking, it's just here to hold these mods. The Mire is a good choice because it has a passive 10% toxin damage. Now, Gara's biggest weakness is her energy. If she runs out of energy, she can't refresh the duration on Splinter Storm, and then it's game over. So we need to take all the steps that we can in order to prevent that. First, we use Zenuric's Energizing Dash. You want this buff to be up at all times to give you energy, so get used to spamming it. Secondly, you want to use Death Cube. Death Cube has a very good unique mod called Energy Generator, which will help us by making enemies drop more energy orbs. The second reason why we use a Sentinel is because we can cast a Splinter Storm on it as well, so we basically stack double the damage. Despite all this, because of energy leeches, we may still be sometimes depleted of energy. Therefore, using energy pads is essential. You can buy the blueprint for the medium ones from your clan's dojo or the larger ones from your syndicates. Alright, now let's talk about how to use Gara. When you first enter the mission, you want to place Splinter Storm on both yourself and your sentinel. You press 2 while targeting nothing to buff yourself. Now, to buff your sentinel, you must first look up, then spam the H key to switch camera angles, and then spam your second ability at the same time so you can cast the buff on Death Cube. Then you want to start spamming energizing dashes to get your energy up. The damage indicator on the right side of the screen will show you how much damage you have stacked up on your Splinter Storm and how much damage you'll be doing by bumping into enemies. Keep in mind that this is not damage per second. Basically, every time you come into contact with an enemy, you will deal that amount of damage. If the enemy doesn't die on first contact, simply back off and bump into him again. To increase this damage number, you have to use your 4th and 1st abilities together. First, you cast your 4th ability, Mass Vitrify, which creates a wall that will eventually turn enemies inside into glass. Enemies outside will try to break through the wall. The health of the wall is increased by the health of the enemies caught inside, so it might be a good idea to let it expand for a while so you can catch more enemies with it. The wall has 12 sides, as you can see on the ability button, and each of these sides can be destroyed independently from the others. Now you need to go outside of the wall to use your first ability, Shattered Lash. If you tap it, you'll deal and stack puncture damage, which is good against Grenier. If you hold it, you'll deal and stack slash damage, which is good against Infested. The amount of damage you deal from this explosion is added to Splinter Storm. The mods on your melee weapon help increase this damage, and therefore you'll be stacking damage on Splinter Storm faster. Her 3rd ability, Spectral Rage, is mainly used as a distraction, and it will cause enemies to try and break the mirrors. If you are close to a mirror when it breaks, it will also increase the damage stack on Splinter Storm. Gara is a pretty complex frame, so I highly recommend you guys to read more about her on the wiki to get the full grasp of her abilities and what she's capable of. In actual practice, there might be a bit of a learning curve to get the flow of it, but once you do, it's pretty straightforward. The most important thing is to make sure that your Splinter Storm duration is kept up by casting your 4th ability regularly. From personal preference, after about 40 minutes to 1 hour, it might be too difficult to make a comeback if you lose your damage stack. A good tip I can give you about survival missions is to try your best and stay in one room. This will cause the enemies to spawn constantly. If you move around too much, it will take them a while to start spawning again and you'll lose life support. You can have a maximum of 7 life support stations, and it is imperative that you always use one so you have 6 available and 1 charging. If you don't do this, you will struggle with life support. If you do it correctly, you'll always be on maximum life support. Not all maps are created equal, so sometimes it might be difficult to find the right spot and the enemies might spawn too slowly. In defense missions, don't forget to give Splinter Storm to the operative for 90% damage reduction. Because he moves around a lot, you might have to actively try to catch him with your wall to refresh his buff. You may also find it a great idea to take Vazarin for protective dash to heal him. All in all, Gara can reach some insane damage numbers. In this clip that's playing in the background, I was stacking over 17 million damage, which is doubled because Death Cube also had the buff. You may find it a great idea to stay away from places which has pits to fall in. Enemies have an uncanny habit of knocking you into them and making you lose your buff. So, if you like playing a walking simulator and killing enemies with your mere presence, then Gara is a very good choice. She's easily one of my favorite frames in the game, and my go-to frame when I want to do some long solo arbitration runs, so I highly recommend her to you guys as well. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you do, then I will personally send you this beautiful postcard of Gara at the beach, so you can sit back, relax, drink some soy milk, and imagine what it would have been like if you were there as well. This is not a scam. Alright everybody, if you want to see this build in action, then come say hi on my stream, and maybe we can even duo Gara. That's right, what's better than solo Gara? You guessed it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're having some very nice soy milk, fantastic day, wherever you are, and hope to see you in the next video. Take care everybody.